chaos in the Capitol, guns drawn in the House, the Democrats win the Senate, and social media shuts down Trump's accounts. So much has happened these last few days, it almost feels like reality TV, but this is the Sandelin Show. It's gonna be a good show. Now it feels like if you haven't been connected to the internet for just a few hours, you miss why the world is on fire this time. And in this case, it's because of this.
Outside, thousands have besieged the building.
Democrats do control or will control Congress. That does change everything.
A former service member was shot to death.
Members of Congress sheltering in place on the floor, people taking what they could as souvenirs.
Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes.
It does mean that on so many issues, Joe Biden will be able to go big.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace.
So in this situation, we have pro-Trump supporters who are doing something which, of course, isn't right. They resort to violence to try to address the problem, and that is never the solution. But that's kind of, I think, where we are all on agreement. So that's not the thing that I want to focus on. I want to focus on something else. The world does what it does best, and we've seen that in 2020. It highlights every single mistake and wrong that someone does. Even if it isn't maybe per se wrong, but someone sees it and perceives it as wrong, they will highlight it. It's what we're good at. That's why we have the cancel culture. No matter if it was 10 years ago, when you did this, oh man, you're canceled, you're out. And we've seen in 2020 how this isn't only just us as individuals, we see this with media and social media. Everything has become politicized. Everyone is trying to highlight the wrongs of someone else, but only if it fits their agenda. Sure, we can see the problem that has now happened with the Capitol, and it isn't good, but what is the actual problem? I believe that this is just the latest symptom of an underlying problem that kind of never seems to be addressed. I think that the main problem is on an individual level. Say that you believe that you're here on this earth, you're here for about 80 years, right? So every day counts. You want to make the best of every day. But for you to be able to do that, you need to be in an environment that is optimized for you to be able to do so, to make certain choices, to have certain freedoms. And then you have your beliefs and how you believe the world should work. And you have all these ideas and these needs of everything that you place in the environment. So everything and every person that is not in line with your view becomes a threat to your ideal situation. So everything standing in the way needs to move. And when someone thinks differently than you, has a different worldview, disagrees on something, then that is a threat. And that is worrisome, right? Because you want to make most of your life, and what if someone makes a decision sometime that might restrict me so that I cannot live my life to the fullest? I think that that is the thing that most people worry about, the fear for the future. And I think it's important that we understand that this is a problem that most people struggle with. It's just expressed in different ways. The symptoms are different. Last year it was the BLM and Antifa and all these kind of things. Now it was the pro-Trump supporters who did something. Same problem, different events. It all comes down to that things don't match with how we believe the world should work. Now, last week we were at a Christian conference and my son saw a pair of shoes that weren't his, and you can see on the photo it looked hilarious. But this is something that we need to do as a people. We need to place ourselves in other people's shoes. So we cannot just only point out their problems and point out everything that is wrong, but try to see it from their perspective so we can see on, can we build something better together? Can we overcome certain problems together? If you think about the people who were now at this protest, why were they there? Why did they riot? Why did they think that this was the solution to their problem? If you think from their perspective, they've just lost a major election, right? To lose a presidential election is big. We saw this in 2016 with Hillary Clinton as well. Democrats weren't happy. So this is not just one party problem. This is something that when you're supporting one of these parties and your person does not get elected, you feel worried. about the future because the other person has other views than you. That's why you vote for one or the other. And many people believe that this was not a fair election, that there was voter fraud. And in this case, it doesn't matter whether that happened or not. This is what they believe. And then we have now on top of that in Georgia that the two Democratic candidates for the Senate have been chosen, have been elected. So they're going to have a majority or at least a tie in the Senate. But Kamala Harris is going to be able to make the deciding vote. So practically they're going to be able to do a lot of things under the leadership of Joe Biden of their plans. So for people who don't believe in those plans, who think that those plans are a threat to their life and the environment and how it would be best for them and other people, then this is troubling. Then you have the whole thing, everything that happened in 2020, and where we saw this political madness and how the media played a role in social media and people were treated unfairly and all these things that have happened, the hypocrisy that we have seen, everything adds to each other and it just erupts in different manners. But friends, Jesus has good news for us. Listen to what he says in Matthew 6 verse 34. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. You know, this sounds awesome, but how is that possible? How don't we worry? Well, the interesting thing is in the context of the verse we just read. Jesus is comparing two groups. You have one group of people who is just living their life, pursuing the things of this world, clothing and money and food, and they're just thinking about what do I need to be able to live. But then you have this other group who Jesus says they seek first the kingdom of God. These people, they realize that, wait a minute, we're not just here for 80 years. God has actually invited us, has called us to be part of a heavenly kingdom that will last for all eternity. And with that in mind, they look different at this life here on planet Earth. And the cool thing is that God says, I know that you need all these things. I know you need clothing. I know you need food. I know you need money. That's the way the world works. You need that and I will provide for you. But seek first the kingdom of God. Why? It's because that shapes our perspective on our everyday life. And when I let go of those worries about this life and how I can make everything in the way that I want it to go, instead I can take that energy, that effort, all these things to think about how can I serve others. Crazy, right? But you know what? Actually, just a few days ago with our son, we read in the Children's Bible. And we read the story in 2 Kings chapter 6, one of my favorite stories. And it's funny, but it is really challenging. It is about the blind army. So the context here is that you have the Syrians and they want to attack Israel. And so every time they make up plans, they don't work. Why don't they work? It's because God is telling the secret plans to Elisha, the prophet of God, who in turn tells the plans to the king of Israel. So they are prepared every time. So they get frustrated. So they're going to find Elisha. They surround the city where Elisha is. And in the morning, Elisha wakes up together with his servant. His servant opens the curtains and sees this huge army, the enemy army. And he's freaking out. And he's like, Elisha, we're gonna die. Look at this. There's all these soldiers. And Elisha is super cool about it. And he's like, don't worry about it. You know, those who are with us are more than those who are against us. So where are those? And looking around, can't see them. So Elisha is asking God, God, please open the eyes of my servant. And God opens his eyes. And guess what he sees? All over the hills, horses and chariots of fire, a heavenly army. And then Elisha is praying to God to blind the enemy army. And he does so. And Elisha steps out to this blind army and he says, hey guys, you seem lost. You're in the wrong place. Here, follow me. So Elisha brings this enemy army, the Syrian army, to the king of Israel. So here's the king of Israel with an enemy army, those who have been troubling them for a long time. And they're blind. They're at his mercy. And it says in 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 21 to 23, now when the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? You know, it says that he's asking it twice, so I can just imagine that he was excited that he could have victory over his enemy. But Elisha says something else. You shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with your sword and your bow? So Elisha has different plans. Don't kill them. But what then? Listen to this. This is incredible. Set food and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. Then he prepared a great feast for them. And after they ate and drank, he sent them away and they went to their master. And I know you're reading this story and you're like, are you crazy? Setting a feast before your enemy. That is like the last thing that someone would do, right? Because wouldn't that even add more power to the enemy, to the person who has different views, people who have different opinions? If I serve them, isn't that only gonna get back to me even worse? Watch this. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. Friends, they got to the situation that was most beneficial to them, a place of peace with the Syrian army, but they didn't do it in the way that we might think, by just destroying the other army. No, no, no. They did the thing that I believe we need to do in our world. We serve our enemy. We love our enemy. We talk with our enemy. And I think that pretty much the only way we can do this, we can love our enemies, is when we realize that this is about eternity. This is not just about this life here on earth. There's an eternal kingdom. God's kingdom is there. It's coming soon. We can be part of it already now. And while we are waiting to actually walk in that kingdom on the streets of gold, we are making the most of what we have here. Not in the way of just looking out for our own. How can I get what I want? How can I push my ideas and ideology onto the world and to others? How can I serve others so that they can also lift their eyes just merely from this life here on planet Earth, but lift their eyes upward to heaven, to the heavenly kingdom, and that they see something in you as a representative of that kingdom, an ambassador of the kingdom of God, and they see you and the way you live your life and the peace that you have, and you love your enemies, and they see that in you, and they're like, I want that too. How do I get that? And friends, that is how we win the most important battles. Sure, there's things here on this earth that are worth supporting and putting your effort in. I'm not saying, don't care about anything that is happening in the world, but keep in mind what is really important, and that is the winning of souls, not of arguments, not of debates, of souls, of people. That is what this really is about. And when we are focused on that, when we realize that this is our calling, this is the reason why we're here on planet Earth. I'm not just living for myself, I'm living to serve others, to love other people into God's kingdom, the kingdom that will last forever. Even when things don't go in the way that we believe would be best, even then we can be relaxed and know that God is in control. God is still able to work through wrong decisions from other people, through circumstances that we shouldn't have found ourselves in. For God, nothing is impossible. We can let go of our worries. Friends, I believe that Jesus is coming soon as our King of Kings. Until then, let's make every day count, and not in the way of just looking out for yourself, but now let's make every day count to see how can we prepare a feast even for our enemies. If you thought that this message was inspiring and gave you hope, then I'm sure you will like the video where we talk about virtual reality in the Bible. How we can live here on earth while already being a citizen in the kingdom of God. I'm sure you will love that video. We'll see you there. Maranatha.